who's a Mooney? Mooney guy is a person who thinks we didn't go to the moon. And the other day, I sort of started becoming a Mooney a little bit. Why? Because they made me, or they asked me to watch a documentary, 3 hour documentary, that went over all the different aspects that the Moonies say are evidence that we did not go to the moon. And why do I have doubts now? And I'm not saying that we didn't go to the moon, that we did go to the moon. I still think we did, but I'm not 100% sure anymore. And the reason is very simple. First of all, I'm open-minded, and I'm willing to consider other possibilities. I don't consider whether Santa Claus is in the North Pole. I don't think I'm going to make a trip there to verify whether Santa Claus is there or not. Okay, and I won't do it either because I'm worried that I may actually find Santa Claus, with Rudolph and Dancer and Prancer. When I come back, they might put me away. Okay, so I'm worried about that. I'm more worried about finding Santa than not finding Santa. Okay, so I don't go to verify these things. I don't go to to the flat Earth, to the edge of the flat Earth to find out if there's a wall of ice there, and the militias, government militias or whatever, they're there to protect so that I won't see the wall. No, I won't go to the Antarctica just to find out, that the Earth is flat. Okay, I don't do those things. But here's a different situation. These people presented their case, some things which I cannot explain. Okay, and until I can explain, I can't say that I'm 100% sure that we went to the moon. I think we did for other reasons, which I'll be discussing now. But all I'm saying is, it does. They did put the little seed of doubt in me, okay, on some things, simply because I cannot explain them myself. Okay. Okay. So one fellow says, he starts out. He says the following. He says, make separate videos for such stuff at least. Even better, a whole different channel. In the chat, we were saying that get back on topic already. What the hell is this channel, anyways? Irrational conspiracies. Well, no, we got to put it in the right perspective, okay? There are different aspects to the Mooney issue. Here they are, okay? Let me summarize them here. There's the politics and conspiracy aspect of this, okay? That's one issue. There's also the, you can criticize the assumptions, okay, whether some of those assumptions are correct or not. So that's a way of attacking the hypothesis in your theory, okay? What are the hypotheses, the assumptions that you make, okay? And then there's the scientific aspect, the theories, etc. Where you have, how did we get to the moon? Did we have booster rockets that took us there? Even if it was filmed, let's assume it was all a hoax, okay? How did they do the filming? Isn't that a valid question of physics? Because we're talking about, again, not the political aspect there. We're saying, how did they do the filming so that they were able to convince you that we went to the moon? Okay, how did they do all these tricks? It's just like a magic trick that you see the magician perform on stage. You try to figure out how he tricked you. And that is science. You're saying, how did he do that? I want to know. I want to understand that. And this is the same thing. Even if they fooled you, even if it's a hoax, you want to say, okay, how did they do that? Okay, so that part is scientific. So it's not all just, conspiracy. Okay? There are conspiracies and there are conspiracies. Okay? And there are several aspects of the moon landing which are worthy of study from a scientific perspective. That's all I'm saying. Okay? And again, I'm suggesting people keep an open mind. Okay, why did I change my mind a little bit? And it's got to do with this. Here, let me show it to you one more time. Okay, here it goes. Pay attention. Listen carefully. Here it goes.
Then, on September 16, they appear for a press conference in front of the global members of the press who welcome them with a standing ovation. Everyone expects to see three absolute heroes radiating with happiness and pride for their incredible achievement. But their faces appear somber, tense, somehow preoccupied instead. They seem uncomfortable, and there are several truly embarrassing moments during the event. When the three astronauts are asked the meaning of a mission that has brought mankind on another celestial body for the first time, the three don't seem too eager nor too enthusiastic about answering the question.
Many of us and many other people in many places have speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
And when Armstrong describes their achievement as the beginning of a new era, he seems more like a person forced to read from a script than someone actually convinced of his own words.
The entire program, it's a beginning of a new age.
Okay, so the way I look at this is, to me, they were ashamed. This is the I mean, I'm no psychologist, I'm no shrink, but I can tell you just my impression. These people are hiding something. This is not the attitude that you had when you went to the moon and came back. This is not the gung ho attitude that you're alive because you came back. And here you have all these people clapping and saying you guys are hero, and the guy are kind of looking at themselves and saying, are we heroes? So this was telling. The other one was the fact that they chased after them to swear on the Bible, and none of them would. And then Neil Armstrong has appeared only in one reunion, and he was very somber again, very bad attitude there, shameful attitude if you ask me. And he never appeared again, maybe because the United States government did not invite him, saying that this guy might spill the beans. He's just too obvious. So this was very telling in my opinion. Now, one possibility is that maybe the first moon landing never happened. Maybe the others happened. But this, for me, was very important. Okay, and let me tell you why. When a detective goes out to a crime scene, whether he's a private eye or a police detective, they suspect everyone. That's the way it works. You're not innocent. You're not innocent until proven guilty. Everybody is considered a suspect until you can eliminate them as a suspect. In other words, until you verify their alibis. And that's the way you should work this issue as well. You should leave all preconceptions aside and look at it from a scientific point of view, strictly from a scientific point of view. And one of the things that detectives look at is the attitude the person has. They just killed his wife, and he says, "Oh, I want someone to go look for this guy." And then he goes out and parties with his girlfriend, and what are you gonna say, that the guy had the right attitude, or he's got an attitude where he says, "Well, yeah, my wife died." It's not the right attitude. The right attitude that you should have, you would think the guy has, is, "Oh, my poor wife, she died, she was killed." Those are normal reactions. When someone doesn't react in that way, yeah, the detectives suspect a lot, And so all I can tell you is this was a bad reaction. And this is on top of some of the other things that happened in there in that documentary, like, to me, okay, that I cannot explain. And that's like when the astronaut was pulled back suddenly, like he was lifted from some wires. In some cases, they jumped too fast. And that's what it appears to me right now. I need to investigate that further. I'm going to run it in slow motion to find out if those jerky motions are correct, if they're natural, if they were done in a studio or on the moon. There's also the dust that the rovers, twirl around. They say, well, that shouldn't happen on the moon. I don't know if that's the case. I got to find out that as well. So there are certain things that the documentary mentioned that concern physics, and these are things that I like to look at. They do concern physics. Okay, so one fellow says, he says, "Bill, since you were in search of truth, the truth is what is not hidden." Oh man, why do these people even come to science? No, truth has nothing to do with science. Truth has to do with belief, with religion. Okay, when you prove something, when you have the truth, you're talking about religion. When you know it, when you know the truth, you're talking about religion. Okay, and then he continues. He says, believing the that U.S. landings have taken place is a leap of faith. Okay, to some degree that's true. And then he says, I don't believe it's a hoax. I know for sure it's a hoax. And it reminds me of the Three Stooges, where they say, do you think you can make it work, Larry? And he says, I don't know. I don't think. I know. And Mo says, I don't think you know either. So yeah, and then he continues, he says, so it puts you gullible as a believer, okay, in front of a leap of faith. And me instead as a free thinker who has analyzed tons of original NASA documents and formed his own opinion on the matter. It turns out that he later says that there are no original NASA documents because they were all destroyed. So, these people live with these contradictions. All they have is emotions, and that's a bad sign in science. You really, when you're looking at these things, you have to look at it as a detective. Everybody's guilty, okay, until you can prove them innocent. Okay, and you should keep an open mind. You should go in there objectively, and it's very hard for people to do that. They have all these emotions in them. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, so he comes up with a series of issues that are not very solid, but which are raised by many Moonies. Okay, and here's some of them. Okay, official documents, they're lost, and he says currently there are only copies of the originals. Again, how can he say that he looked at originals and then he says there's only copies? Then it says whether the Russians shared results with the Americans. Well, they share a lot of things out there. They have joint missions, and it's like, there are things that are not top secret. Okay, so there's a lot of information shared between the Russians and the Americans out there in space, which have nothing to do with some technical secrets that one side can steal from the other. Okay, so they do share information. Okay, certain information. Mining on the moon, yeah, that's future. We can't talk about that right now. And whether there's been no trip to the moon in the last 50 years, again, there are reasons for that. There's no reason to go to the moon, and that's why they never had to prepare anything in the last 50 years to go back to the moon. You can't see the flag. Well, that's very easily solved. Very easily. They can put a flag on the moon with an artificial mission. They don't need to put an astronaut on the moon. So the next time they go there, they can still put the old flag there in the same place. They say the flag's there, so they can fool you anyways. Okay, so that's not a way of proving to anyone that you went to the moon or not. And then the power of the rockets. Do we have power enough in the rockets to send rockets to the moon? That's a valid issue. That does concern physics. Okay, but I'm going to address a couple other issues which have to do with physics. Okay, this is about physics, not about really your opinion. This has to do with something that we should be able to test. Okay, we can test it here on Earth. The first one is radiation. Okay, did the Russians send turtles to pass the two Van Allen radiation belts twice? Back and forth. Okay, so the question is, the Russians did that a few months before the first moon landing, or alleged moon landing. The turtles came back alive according to official versions, right? Russian and American, by the way. And so this fellow says, he says there, the USA send human life beyond the Van Allen radiation belts without even a small mole grown, or without a tumor, or with classic symptoms of radiation. He thinks that if you send something alive like a turtle or a human, the thing should come back. This living entity should come back with cancer. And I think the expectations, the notions that people have about what radiation will do to you, how fast it will do it to you, and at what dosage it will do it to you, they haven't, I think, looked at that at all. Okay, this is where the problem is. And so he says Van Allen radiation belts are impossible for humans to cross. Is that the case? Okay, and so when you go to NASA and to other sites, these are some of the papers you find out there. Okay, and I don't know if you read any of these, but these are things that you would have to read in order to answer these questions. Okay, and here's one. It says radiation doses measured during Apollo were significantly lower than the yearly average of a 5 rem set by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission for workers who use radioactive materials in factories and institutions across the United States. And so they go through these numbers and they say, look, these are the radiation doses that they would have received. They're way below the, I think it's what, the 5 rem, average 5 rem, that would start causing problems. These are way below that level. And so to say that, you're going to have cancer because you pass the radiation belts, I think his expectations is what's overblown. Okay. And here NASA says the main operational countermeasures against the adverse effects of radiation is simply limiting astronaut exposure, which means limiting the amount of time astronauts are allowed to be in space. Okay, this is accomplished primarily by shortening overall mission duration on the space station to 3 to 6 months. Okay, so they have these different ways of protecting the astronauts. Some of them involve protection, some of them involve time. They also have this suit which measures radiation, to see how much doses they received and if they've been zapped or whatever. And a couple months ago, I went for an MRI, and I asked the gal who ran the machine. I said, are you because they walk outside, right? They leave you inside to get zapped. And so I asked her, do you get radiation, et cetera, et cetera? And she said, she told me a little bit about it. She says she has a radiation meter, and every time throughout the day she carries it with her. And so they measure her radiation, how much dose she gets. And she says it's actually quite normal, because she's outside. There's radiation in the room. She's in that room constantly. She goes back outside. Maybe at some point she might receive, by mistake, some radiation. I don't know. But they monitor that, and she doesn't get cancer because of that. Okay. Even the people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's not, a lot of them got cancer many years later. It's not like they suddenly, start growing tumors all over unless they were zapped directly. Okay, so again, these people have a poor notion of how radiation actually works. But there are more basic things. Here's another one, okay, this fellow raised. Okay, he raised all the issues, so I'm just going to consider what he said, essentially, because everybody raises the same arguments. Okay, says today we have a tin of tuna, tin can out there, orbiting the Earth in low orbit because humanity cannot do more than that. Okay, so we have this tuna can up there, okay, it's called the ISS, and the first thing I want to establish, yes, that there is a can of tuna going up there. Okay, so here's this is an amateur photographer, filmer, I guess you could call him, and he filmed the ISS. There's the ISS at night. Okay, and that's what it looks like in one of his photographs. Okay, so he says, look, I filmed this thing orbiting the Earth up there in the sky. Okay, and there's hundreds of amateur astronomers on Earth that film these things and take pictures and so on. And like I said, all you need to do is, here's another version of that, okay? Take your binocular or your telescope, whatever you have, or your friends, right? And take a look and find out if there is out there this thing that you see there, the picture that this fellow took, which is a space station, this ISS, International Space Station. Is this thing out there? So if you confirm that there is such a space station out there, at least we got to say, okay, there's this monster 500 miles out there, right? Or I think 500 kilometers, floating around the Earth. How did we put that piece of metal? Not a little tiny thing. This is not a little tin can. This is a big monster, okay, that's floating out there because you can see it with your telescope. You can do the calculation, how much you see of it. You can say, okay, that thing is big. That's not a kite, okay? The ISS kite, okay? No, that's a real station that's floating out there. How did we do that? Did we do that all of a sudden and we just go one day and suddenly, decide to send the space station out there? No, there had to be many steps in between. And among them, you had to orbit the Earth with some vehicle of some kind. And, when you look back, yeah, all those steps were taken all the way to even putting a man around in orbit. Gagarin, the first one who went into space around the Earth. And so, some people deny that. There's different level of credulity or incredulity. Some people don't believe this, others believe less, others believe none at all. And so you got to go step by step, very slowly. And so, here's one thing that this fellow raises, because he's okay, the tin can's floating out there. That's it. They put that out there to fool people. That's a hoax. Okay. So he says, do you think it's possible that a woman with hair fluttering in the air releases dangerous molecules of water inside the space base that orbits the Earth? He doesn't believe that this is true, what I'm going to show now, which this lady, okay, she's an astronaut. She's up there on the space station. She releases a big drop of water, and then she swallows it. And he says, how would she do that? That's dangerous because you have all this water floating, could kill someone. So, is this guy for real? Does he really believe that this is going to kill someone because he releases some water inside the ISS? And, are we saying that this never happened, that this is all green screened? Is that how they did this? Is that the physics behind all this, that she's just floating there and pulled with wires? Each one of her hairs is probably being pulled with wires. Maybe they have a ventilator blowing her hair out. How did they do this? Please explain the mechanism, how they filmed this so as to convince you, on top of the fact that she's floating, okay? And here was the other fellow, this was the same. You can see he's going from one place to another inside the ISS. Did they do that all with wires? In this little station? Is it all green screened? Is this all made in computer made, photoshopped or whatever? How did they do this? The guy's floating around. He lets go of his, his TV there, his little thing, his computer. Let me make this smaller. Sorry. Making it a little smaller so you can see what the guy's doing there. Okay, he lets go of his little computer there, okay? And you can see it's floating. So how did they do that? Please explain the mechanism. I want to know the physics behind this. I'd like to do it myself. Okay, so yeah, I don't believe that this was done in a gravity scenario. This was done in non-gravity, and that's what the ISS does. So to think that this guy's not in the ISS, well, where is he? Is he in Hollywood? Is this being all done with strings and wires? Is that what this guy really thinks? Okay, so this is real. Okay, and if you don't believe that, do you believe this? Okay, here's this guy again. He's in this airplane that takes a given curve at a certain speed, a certain angle, and the guy floats for 20 seconds in the air. That's it. 20 seconds. After that, he falls back down because this is not an astronaut. This is what is known as a pilot. In other words, people who fly within airplane level, they're known as pilots. Only when you go to a certain level are you known as an astronaut. So these are pilots flying in an airplane, and this only lasts 20 seconds. So you can do this for 20 seconds. The guy you just saw a minute ago, he did it for 45 minutes straight. So to say that, that never happened, that's a hoax, that's all done with wires and strings and whatever, now you got a problem. You got a serious problem. Okay, here's another. Oh, I fell to the other side. Give me a second here. Here's this astronaut. He's jumping on the moon. Now, could this have been done with wires? And you can see him floating around. You say, well, it could have been done by wires, no doubt about it. And, it's a possibility. And what I did was run it at twice the speed, and here he goes at twice the speed. Okay, so all you have to do, I mean, this is obviously, you could do this on Earth, and then slow it down, for to convince people. Here you see it slowed down. Okay, we can do this on Earth. This could be done in a studio. I have no problem believing that this could have been done here on Earth, but not the astronaut going from one room to another with his little computer floating around. How do you do that? So no, that guy was in zero gravity. Not only was he in zero gravity, he was in zero gravity for 45 minutes straight. Don't tell me that was done in Hollywood. Okay, and so here we have, this is Buzz Aldrin. This was on Apollo 11, okay? And he's doing some push-ups, or like one of the guys in Houston said, well, I didn't know if you did a pull-up or a push-up there, or chin-up, because he says he couldn't tell, but you can see he's floating around, okay? Was this done by Hollywood for NASA? Is that how this was done? Okay, this one, maybe we can still believe. Okay, how about this one? Let me show you this one. Okay, here we have it. Let's to the other side. Give me a second. Okay, here's a flashlight. And Buzz Aldrin just lets go of it. Okay? And then he steadies it, and you'll see what happens to the flashlight. It moves very, very slowly. And also check to see where he grabs the flashlight. He grabs it from places where you would think that there are little threads. Okay, he pushes it. Okay, is that being hung by threads from different places? Because you're going to see that flashlight move around in different directions. In fact, troll around. How does he do this trick here on Earth? Did he do this in a studio? And here's an even worse trick. Here's the standing flashlight. Okay, and watch it how it slowly, very slowly, goes from, stands on its head. How do they do this trick? Even today, how do you do this trick unless it's in a gravity, not a zero gravity scenario? Okay, you can see it's going slowly. And I said, okay, let's see if it's true, because see, for the astronaut that was jumping, I said, okay, I doubled the speed, and I can show that very easily that could have been done on Earth, no problem at all. What I did with this was, very simple. You can do this trick at home as well, okay? We have a little, my magic wand, okay? And, if you stand this up and let go of it, it falls immediately. It does throw around, but then immediately it stabilizes. It doesn't stay like this, like in this case, the flashlight stayed like this for quite a while, okay? I can't reproduce that with this trick here. So how did he do the trick? Well, tell me the physics behind it, okay? That's what I want to understand. Now, you could say, well, he didn't go to the moon. He was in Earth orbit. Great, that's what I wanted to hear, because he's got to be out there in space somewhere. He's either going to the moon or he's going around the Earth. Okay, those two I can accept. To say that Aldrin was here on Earth in a studio and this was all filmed in studios with the lights from everywhere, no, you're going to have to explain that one to me. Show me how you do that in a studio with the lights and with whatever you want. Okay, so don't tell me that this guy was not in space. That's my point. Okay, this guy was in space. Whether he was in orbit around the Earth or going to the moon, that part can be debatable. What is not debatable is that this was not done in a studio. Okay, this was not Photoshop, which did not exist at the time. Green screen started, by the way, after the 70s. Okay, until then they had blue screen, and even before that, 1898, more than 100 years ago, they started with black screen. They had this black screen, and they already had invented it almost at the same time they invented movies. So we could do that. We can do that in a studio. What we cannot do in a studio, some of the tricks he did with a flashlight. We can't do that, okay? So, again, you got to explain it to me, the physics behind it, okay? Don't tell me that you believe or you don't believe. I need the physics. I need the mechanism, okay? Okay, in fact, some of the people who rail against, the official version, they admit that these guys went at least into space in orbit around the Earth. Here it is. Let me show it to you. Okay, pay attention.
It is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit.
Okay, so Buzz Aldrin, he did a little trick there that's not easy to do in Hollywood. Okay, even with strings or wires or whatever. Okay, and you can see that they're saying there that the guy was at least in Earth orbit. Okay, and here they provide a little bit of proof on that, and that's that the way they filmed the Earth from the capsule is by not filming all of the Earth. It was a nice little trick. Okay, I want you to watch carefully because again, this has to do with physics, with how things are done. Okay, and here it is. This is how things are done, assuming you want to fool the public, and this could be one way they did it. Okay, so again, you got to keep an eye on all this stuff because some of these arguments are good to hear. Okay, here it is. Okay, let's look at it.
Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used.
Okay, so what they did was film a portion of the Earth, and they used as a contour the window of the capsule. Okay, now was that done from the moon or on the way to the moon, or was that done while orbiting the Earth from relatively close by and just filming a portion of the Earth and making it look like it was a globe that you were staring at? It's a valid question. Okay, how did they do the trick if they did the trick? Okay, and you know, why did they show it? Well, that's something else. That's got to do with conspiracy. But the physics of it, that is debatable. That's something we can treat in this channel at least. Okay. Okay, so other issues that were mentioned, you know, here and there, and a lot of people mentioned, here's one of them, the shadows. Okay, when you look at this from above, okay, look at it from above here, you can see the shadows are parallel. But as he moves the camera, okay, the shadows, depending on the angle, seem to converge. They're not parallel anymore. Okay, look at it one more time. From above and from a different angle and below. And again, with a terrain that is not completely straight. Okay, so, you know, shadows, I don't know if that's a good argument because, again, people make too many assumptions of what they think they should be looking at. Okay, and here this guy can explain the mechanism of why we see these lines which are not parallel depending on the angle. Okay. And again, one of the things you don't see is double light. If there were 2 lights, for example, right, you should see 2 shadows. Okay, and that's not the case because they see some shadows go this way, the other guy shadow goes that way. Well, if you have 2 lights, you should have at least 2 shadows, and you don't see that. What did they do? Rub them off the film? So again, how do you do this? Tell me the physics behind it that underlies this. Okay. Another one was the fall off of light. Okay, and here you see what they're talking about. They're saying, look, you got a shiny part in front and a darker part in behind. They have this fall off of light. Okay, they say what you should see is something like a desert there. You should see the sun shining evenly across the whole landscape. Okay, so they say this is proof, evidence, you know, that Apollo 11 never happened on the moon. Okay, but here I show Apollo 15. Okay, here it goes. And you can see that they've got this rover, this golf cart going around the moon, and it's pretty even to be there. So are we saying that Apollo 11 never went to the moon, but Apollo 15 did? I mean, how did they film this? To double light? Okay, so again, you can't be picky with your information. You got to put all the information down. If you see something that denies your theory, you should put it out there. Okay, and here you can see a comparison of both of these. Okay, Apollo 11, 69 on one side, Apollo 15 on the other, and you can see that the surface there looks pretty much like that desert that they filmed there. Okay, so I don't know. I don't think this is a good argument to raise, and that's one of the arguments that the people who made the film did make. Okay, and I don't know. You got to look at all data, the one that certifies your theory and also the one that goes against your theory. Okay. Okay, so what can I say as a conclusion? You got to be open-minded. That's what you got to be. Okay, and you got to be available to think in different ways and in different scenarios. But here's my conclusion for you, for anyone who wants to act as a detective to find out, objective detective, to find out if the moon stuff ever happened, okay, if he wants to be honest with himself, first, don't jump to conclusions. Okay, that's the first conclusion. Okay, then be objective. Remove all emotions. People are very emotional about conspiracies. Okay, and you got to stay away, and if possible, from the conspiracy and focus primarily on the physics of it. How did they do it? Okay, that's what you really want to get to. Okay, even if they fooled you, even if it's a hoax, you want to know how they did that as well. Okay, so how did they get to the moon? Okay, if they got there, and how did they make a hoax if they fooled you? Okay, both. You have to explain the hows in both cases. Okay, you have to start by viewing things in light most favorable to your opponent, to the other person's view. Okay, be critical of your own theory. Okay, criticize yourself. Don't just say, "Oh yeah, that's a hoax," and blah blah blah, and just keep going. No, you got to be a little more paying attention to details and try to see if you can make holes in your own theory. Okay, investigate what is unclear. Okay, there's some things I cannot explain, and that's why I'm reserving a little bit of doubt there, because there are some things I cannot explain. Just as simple as that. And don't throw the baby away with the wash water. You don't reject all of it because of one little detail or whatever that made you change your mind. Okay, I don't throw the whole baby with the wash water. And what's my reasoning is that we had all these intermediate steps. Okay, we sent first a rocket out there into space at some point in time. It orbited the Earth. Then they sent the dog. Then they sent the man. Then they sent the woman. They went through all these steps to say that none of that happened. That it's all a hoax. You're throwing away the baby with the wash water. You're saying, well, you don't believe it, blah blah blah. But how is it that we have a space station, an ISS, a monster? What is it? Tuna can orbiting the Earth. How did we get it up there? I mean, are you just going to say that one day they just woke up and they said, okay, let's put all these pieces of metal together and just throw it up there? Is that how it was done? So you got to explain all the steps that led to the ISS. And that's when you're going to find out that there were many trips by rockets, by probes going into space. Did we ever take pictures of Venus, of Mercury, of Mars with artificial vehicles? I think we did. And so we do have rockets powerful enough to take us to the moon, certainly to Mars. Okay. And they have all these ICBMs. You think that they can't go from Russia to the United States and from the United States to China and so on? Of course they can. And you think that can't happen? Well, I don't know. I got news for you. You better sleep with an umbrella. Okay, let's move on to the subject matter of today. But I had to cover that. Sorry, guys, for a lengthy discussion there. But the moon landing is pretty important stuff to a lot of people, and there's the physics part of it that interests me, and I think we should cover that to some degree here. Of course, I'm not going to be as lengthy with the moon landings in the future, but I do want to cover certain aspects when something comes up. If someone comes up with some kind of evidence, proof, or some mechanism, really, that's what I'm looking for, physical mechanism, I'm going to address it, okay, because I think it's pertinent to, at least to this channel.